All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Between Veterans Day and Thanksgiving approaching, it was difficult to find a perfect date for the sixth meeting. So thank you for being here. This meeting about the DAT will definitely feel like we are bombarding you with a lot of information. But the beauty of virtual meetings is that this will be recorded for you to rewatch as many times as you need in the future. All right, so just a quick outline of tonight's meeting so that you know what you're getting yourself into. We'll be mentioning a scholarship, then we'll be breaking down the sections of the DAT, how to use boot camp, how to register for the DAT, retaking the DAT, some other tips, some eBoard perspectives, a Q&A, and then attached to the end of the PowerPoint, we won't be going through this, but for your own reference, there is a DAT Slayer study guide by a previous pre-dental member. So hopefully we won't surpass more than an hour with the critical information. The Q&A might go a little over, but as always, feel free to come and go as you need. All right, so to start off on a high note, we will be offering a DAT Bootcamp scholarship this semester. It will require probably a short essay, and we will provide more information at the next meeting, in the GroupMe, and via the emails. So you will definitely find out more information about that. All right, let's jump right into it. So the sections of the DAT, there are 4 of them. The first is science, the second is the PAT, the third is reading comprehension, and then the final section is the quantitative reasoning, which is pretty much just math. So during the actual exam, you will get a snack/bathroom break right in the middle. So as you see on the screen is the exact order that you will be taking the test in terms of the sections. Okay, so we're going to begin by breaking down this science section first. So biology consists of 40 questions. You can look at the bullet points to see what those consist of, and those numbers aren't always exact, but typically you will get about that amount in each section, give or take. So a few tips and tricks are, well, first of all, this is definitely the densest section on the DAT because biology is such a broad-ended category and field. It's hard to kind of hone in on super specific details. So try to go through this section as quickly as you can so that you can leave more time for general chemistry and organic chemistry, which we will go over soon. It's super easy to get overwhelmed by this section just because it is a lot of content, but you will be okay. Note cards are typically your best friend from most people's perspective. And what do people typically use? So usually people rely on the DAT Bootcamp PDF, which I will show you in a second, DAT Destroyer, and Cliff's AP Biology. A lot of people swear by that. So we will take a deeper look into that in a minute. And then a lot of students highly recommend on the DAT page, you can click on the biology strategy section, and there's a ton of tips and tricks and articles. Specifically, this article is really helpful, but that's something you can read as you start to study. All right, so speaking of DAT Bootcamp, on the left, you can see a 120-page document about the biology section. You can see each subsection. So don't focus on all of the details. Like I said, the DAT generally tests broad concepts. So breadth, not depth, is usually the slogan that most people follow. If you try to focus in on every single detail, it's honestly physically impossible and you will get overwhelmed really quickly. So kind of taking a bigger picture approach and trusting what you've learned in biology 1113, potentially 1114, and maybe even AP biology. having a good basis will definitely set you up for success. But again, there are plenty of people who go into taking the DAT with no prior knowledge on some of these subjects. And then on the right, we can see the DAT Destroyer, which contains a bunch of different sections in the DAT, like organic chemistry, general chemistry, but most people recommend it for biology. Trying to get through all of these questions can be helpful. A lot of students don't get them correct the first time and can become super distraught, but the paragraph explanations in the back are super crucial. So mostly with biology, sometimes it's best to focus on doing as many practice problems as you possibly can, rather than, once again, focusing on every little detail. All right. Also, just something to mention, we will be having a Q&A at the end, so if you want to write down your questions as we go, feel free to do that, send them in the chat, or save them for the end, because I know this is a lot of info. So, general chemistry. There are 30 questions within this subsection, and a few things to keep in mind is that OSU definitely prepares you very well. So hopefully by taking those courses, you'll have a strong foundation that you can build upon. In this section, you won't be given a calculator, so it's all mental math and shortcuts with calculations. That definitely sounds daunting, but they're pretty straightforward and pretty simple, at least from my own experience. Once again, a lot of people use Bootcamp, and as you can see, if you don't know who Mike is, he is on the right, and you will quickly get to know him through Bootcamp if you choose to use that. Some people will supplement with Chad's videos from CourseSaver if you need some extra review. Maybe you haven't taken general chemistry in a couple of years. Maybe it was not your strong suit, just like me, and you might need some reinforcement. Also, for this section, the formulas need to be memorized, but from my experience, I did not really use many of the formulas during my actual exam. So once again, just a reminder to focus on the big picture. If you don't memorize every single detail, every single formula, you will probably be okay. All right, on to the third section within science, organic chemistry. Once again, you will have 30 questions. Again, OSU prepares you super well. Even if you haven't taken Organic Chemistry 2 yet, that can often be learned through Bootcamp. I know some people have conflicting thoughts on that. Of course, it's better if you have taken it, but there have been plenty of pre-dental students who go into the DAT having only taken Organic Chemistry 1. So it's definitely doable. It just might require a little more effort. And something that really helps students, which I did myself, was creating a reaction notebook during the actual class. So while I was enrolled in organic chemistry, my professor required us to make one anyway, and it ended up being super helpful for the studying part for the DAT. Or you can always make one as you're studying through Bootcamp or Destroyer, whatever you use. And then instead of focusing on memorizing the mechanism, try to understand the why. I'm sure you will hear that a lot while you're taking the course, but just let it be a reminder. It will really set you up for success if you understand rather than kind of regurgitate and memorize. Once again, we recommend using Bootcamp and Mike's videos and also supplementing with Chad's videos. On the right, you can see that Bootcamp has kind of already provided you with a reaction notebook. It's, I think, like maybe a 10 or 15 page document that basically just lists every single reaction, and then at the end of the document, it shows you the mechanism. I will show you how to navigate all of that later on in the meeting, but that's definitely something that you can even use while you're taking organic chemistry at OSU. You can download it without having a Bootcamp subscription. All right, now this slide is definitely a lot of information, but don't be overwhelmed. So the PAT is often a very stressful section for folks, but it's just because we're not familiar with it. Once you practice, once you spend more time, it will honestly become a little more natural, and you might even see the world a little differently because it requires a lot of kind of, rotation and engineering and 3D within your mind. So this section is 90 questions in 1 hour. Within these 90 questions, there are 6 different categories. Each picture on the screen represents one of those categories. And each section contains 15 questions. So there's cube counting, top front end, hole punching, angle ranking, keyholes, and pattern folding. I'm not going to read every single description because you can do that on your own, but what I will say is that if you are overwhelmed by that slide, at the next meeting, which will be on December 2nd, we will be having a guest speaker, Joe Kainrad. He is a D2 at OSU's College of Dentistry. If you all went to Pre-Dent Day last February or last January, you have probably encountered him. He is going to do a breakdown of each of those sections that you just saw on the last slide of the PAT, just because, speaking from personal experience, I was very stressed out by that section, and having heard his little breakdown really helped me go forward confidently. He'll also kind of have a Q&A about the general DAT, his pre-dent journey, and dental school. So if you'd like, you can start preparing your questions. We might even have another guest speaker for the next meeting. We're not 100% sure. And then something that's very helpful for a lot of people is downloading the DAT Bootcamp app specifically for the PAT section. So even if you haven't paid for DAT Bootcamp, you can access a ton of PAT generators. So you can see in the middle image, perceptual ability is at the bottom. And if you click on that, you can get all of those sections that we just went over. And when you're waiting in line for something, when you're on a road trip, when you're bored, you can just pull out your phone and kind of mindlessly go through a few, and it will really train your mindset to kind of think that way. And over time, it will become a lot easier. So unfortunately, with the free version, you can't access any of those other sections besides the PAT. So if you want to begin without starting your 90-day subscription, you can totally do that for the PAT. Okay, so we have done science, we have done the PAT. You would have had a bathroom/snack break, and now after that break, we're moving on to the reading comprehension section. So here you will find 50 multiple choice questions in 1 hour. Within those 50 multiple choice questions, it is subdivided into 3 reading passages. For each passage, you will get about 16 questions. You can see I kind of took a screenshot of my understanding of it while I was using Bootcamp. So the reading passages are about 13 to 15 relatively short paragraphs. They are typically scientific in nature. They might reflect topics covered in dental school, but often they're totally unrelated. Some are super interesting and some aren't. The way that it's presented while you take the exam, and the cool thing about DAT Bootcamp is that it mimics exactly what the exam looks like. So it's a split screen. On the lower half of the screen are those 16 questions. On the upper half of the screen is the reading, the passage. So it's all contained on one page, so you don't have to constantly flip back and forth. Some tips and tricks include at the end of every day of studying, even though it's probably the last thing you want to do, it's best to read just one article. Bootcamp or any resource, just kind of getting that acuity down of fast critical reading is super important and something that you can kind of mindlessly do at the end of every day. Try every method until you find one that you like. There are a ton of different methods to tackle this section. You'll learn there's one thing called the search and destroy method. There's another method called the vanilla method. There's a ton of different options, and for each person, we'll typically kind of blend a bunch together, or might just use one, or they might not use any. So it's totally up to you and how the way your mind works and how the way you read best to kind of discover which way is most effective and efficient to get 50 multiple choice questions done in 1 hour. Once again, DAT Bootcamp is what most people use, but it's definitely harder than the actual DAT. So it's great for practice. They also have scientific articles to practice. So if you click on the subsection, you'll be able to find a list of articles that you can read at the end of a study session or to even begin your day. Okay, we're already at the last section. So the last section is the quantitative reasoning or the math part of the DAT. Within this, you will be answering 40 multiple choice questions in 45 minutes. You can see the topics below. So something that I highly recommend if you are overwhelmed or not super great at math like me is to start reviewing the Bootcamp math formula cheat sheet. This is something that you can download without having the DAT subscription, which I will show you in a second how to do. It's basically just a 2, I think, page document that goes through a bunch of core formulas that you should know. And honestly, if you get this down before even starting DAT Bootcamp, it will make your life a lot simpler. But also, if you don't have time, that's totally fine. You can start reviewing it while you begin studying for the DAT. So unlike the general chemistry section, you will be provided a basic calculator. It's not a physical calculator. It is one that is available through like the screen. So that's a little difficult to get used to, but you definitely can do it. And it's pretty similar to the GRE math in terms of simplicity. So if you want some extra practice, that is something some people will opt for. And then there are certain types of questions that you should definitely be comfortable with knowing the steps. A lot of them are pretty formulaic. So it's pretty like step-based. For example, one question that you will most likely get on your DAT is the probability of rolling a die or a dice. That's something that most people will see. So for example, getting to know how to do those problems really well will definitely be worth it. A lot of people recommend using the DAT Math Destroyer, even though it's definitely pretty long. I've heard that people will have almost identical questions on their DAT pop up. Of course, that's not always true, but if you struggle in math, it's highly recommended on top of Bootcamp. Okay, so as for using Bootcamp, it is pretty flexible. And as you can tell, the amount of times that I've mentioned Bootcamp, it's definitely the most recommended resource. There is a 10-week study plan available. Just by Googling Ari's 10-week schedule, you can immediately find a PDF of it. And you kind of have the freedom to adjust it or work independently. So it's not a fixed schedule. You can kind of make it fit you and your own studying and learning journey and technique. Typically, people will buy the 90-day subscription, so just about 3 months. And it is a costly subscription. It's almost $500. So with the pre-dent code, you can get $70 off, but it's something to keep in mind because it's not cheap. Usually the club discount allows a trial period. I'm pretty sure that's still true. But if you have a question about that, you can send me a message. Okay, so let's take a closer look at DAT Bootcamp. This is the home screen, but I'm going to actually log off and show you. I think you can still see my screen. Basically, I logged in to DAT Bootcamp, and this is an unpaid subscription. So this is what it would look like if you created an account without paying. So it's completely free on this screen. If you click on the biology section, for example, you can access the biology notes on the free version of Bootcamp. So here's the PDF. That's what I did. I started kind of reviewing them a little earlier than I paid for the subscription. And the same thing goes for the general chemistry section. If you type, or if you click on the worksheets, you can find an entire PDF. Same with the QR section that we just looked over. If you click the worksheets, you can find the cheat sheet. So that's something, I think it's only 2 or 3 pages. That's pretty doable if you're worried about kind of squeezing in time on top of the semester. Also highly recommended, and something I neglected until like the last week before my DAT, are all of these study tools. You can find study strategies. If you need a boost and inspiration, you can find success stories. So these are all things you can access without paying for it. And then, like I said, you can just Google Ari's 10-week schedule, and the very first thing that pops up is his PDF. So that's kind of nice. All right, so back to the PowerPoint. All right, so as for scheduling or registering for the DAT, this looks like a lot of information, and I vividly remember feeling more overwhelmed about registering than starting to study, but it's not that difficult. Basically, you Google apply to take the DAT, or you can directly click that link. And the very first thing they make you do is obtain a DENT PIN, which is basically a personal ID. And then you have to submit an application, which takes a few days to get approved. Once you get approved, you have a 6-month period to take the DAT without any refunds or time extensions. So make sure you are planning on taking it within half of that year. Once again, it is a costly exam, so it's about $415, which on top of DAT bootcamp and on top of application fees, it's something to definitely consider and think about and start planning. So when it asks you what schools you want to report your scores to, most people recommend to just mark them all. Whether you are applying to that school or not, just click select all, and your scores will immediately be sent to all of those schools upon taking the DAT. Even if you're not applying to them, it's okay. And the reason why people recommend this is because otherwise you typically have to pay a fee to send your test scores. So you might as well just mark them all and kind of save a little bit of money there. If you change the date of your exam after registering, there is an additional cost. You can kind of see that table in the bottom right corner, which shows you if you reschedule over a month in advance, it's only a $25 fee. But if you reschedule within 5 days, it's $100. So definitely something to think about as well. Okay, I think that's about it. Okay, so retaking the DAT. First of all, this is extremely common, even though you might not hear about it a lot because there might be some stigma or embarrassment associated with it. It's totally normal considering the sheer magnitude of this exam. It is okay if you have to retake it. So many people do. But you do have to wait about 90 days, so 3 months. That's something to consider if you are planning on applying that cycle. So yeah, something to plan ahead for. You'll be required to submit a new application. So the slide that we just went over, you would have to kind of redo those steps. And you will have to pay the fee again. If you have 3 or more test attempts, then you have to apply for permission to retest. I hope that no one has to take it 4 times, but you never know. Between a 17 and an 18 is the national average for the DAT score. So most people get around that. We'll go over that in the next slide. And then as always, don't be too hard on yourself. Be proud that you're in a position to even apply to graduate school. It's definitely a privilege considering how much time, energy, and money it takes to kind of conquer this route. Just continually reassure yourself. And then finally, they will take your last score of your DAT, not your highest. So if you do have to retake and you end up actually doing a little bit lower than you did your first time around, they're going to take that last score. So definitely a little daunting and stressful, but most people improve. Like I said, the kind of bell curve mean of the DAT score is about a 17.5. And like I said, be proud of yourself if you attain this score. 19 to 20 is more of a competitive score and typically the average score of accepted students, but remember that plenty of people are accepted with a 17 or an 18. Some people like to shoot for above a 20, and maybe if your GPA is a bit lower, that would be kind of the range to have your goal set toward. But again, most dental schools take a holistic approach. So don't beat yourself up if you don't get the exact score that you were hoping for. Be proud of yourself for conquering such a huge exam. Okay, so the DAT Bootcamp Facebook study group is something that a lot of people have mixed feelings towards. But basically, as you can see, over 19,000 people are a member of this group. Through this, you can read people's success stories for some motivation. Many of them have taken it more than once. There are a ton of inspiring stories and helpful hints, whether it's for reading comprehension, PAT strategies, etc. But also recognize when you are spending an unhealthy amount of time reading these posts. If you start to feel anxious, overwhelmed, or inadequate, that's a sign that you need to log off for a while. It's super easy to get sucked into so many stories and so many different perspectives. So kind of put your phone down, take a break, realize that you will be able to do it just like everyone else in that page has. All right, so just some more general tips. I actually have my book right here, and I do recommend it. It is through the ASDA, the American Student Dental Association. If you become a member, they will send you this book. Although once again, it is, I think, about a $90 fee to become a member. So it's not, you don't have to become a member, but it is something that can potentially help you in the future. But with COVID, it's a little harder. So if you have any questions about ASDA, you can reach out to me and we can personally figure out what's the best route. But anyway, through this book, they have some great tips. So they said that studying for the DAT may seem like a daunting task at first, but with a study plan tailored toward yourself, you can achieve your target score. And by Googling, the DAT study guides, you can find a bunch of different ways to construct your own. And it's just important that you customize a schedule that works for you and your schedule. So then on the right-hand side, some other tips they have is to study how you would for school. That's particularly hard if you're taking it over the summer and you're lacking a little bit of structure. But considering the fact that most of us are used to online and virtual schooling at this point, it might be a little smoother of a transition. The second thing, which goes along with the first, is to get into a routine. Make sure you're taking care of yourself because it's easy to become overwhelmed by the amount of studying that you have to do. Third is to review every practiced question. If you get one wrong, especially, understand why you got it wrong and what methods you can take to kind of strengthen your understanding of that section. Because for me personally, it's so easy to ignore my weaknesses, but that's often, not advised. Try to focus on your weaknesses. The next thing, which we'll talk about more, is keeping track of your time. Whenever you take a subject test or full-length test, make sure you try to practice with the real time that you will be allotted on the DAT. Of course, if you're just starting to study, you can ignore that timeline. It will probably stress you out more than it will help. But once you get into the groove of taking more individual practice tests, then you can start to time yourself. And then the last thing, which kind of goes along with what I was just saying, is to know what you don't know. So kind of understand where your knowledge is lacking and focus on this information more than the material you are comfortable with. It sounds super straightforward, but it's a lot harder in practice. All right, so just to briefly mention, this is Kylie Stickrath's study schedule, her Excel sheet. She was the former Pre-Dental Club Social Engagement Chair last year, and now she is a D1 at UNC. She scored really well, and she definitely attributes her religious routine. So as you can see, she dedicated just around 40-ish hours every week to studying. I think that she only studied for about 6.5 weeks, which is definitely a pretty quick turnaround. So on the next slide, you can see her comments on this Excel sheet. She talked about her personal circumstances. She talked about what she used to study. And then in the green, as you could see on the Excel sheet, she would time herself every single day using her phone. If she stopped studying, she would hit pause and only counted how many hours she was actually studying versus just sitting in the library, you know, eating lunch or checking Instagram or something like that. And then on the right hand side, you can kind of see some more comments that she made. This is something that you can kind of go over on your own time, but it's definitely helpful. So after going over her perspective, let's also hear some different perspectives from the executive board. And the point of hearing these different point of views is to show you and to prove to you that there's not just one correct way to study. Everyone adopts a schedule that fits their own needs. So hopefully, instead of overwhelming you, this actually will calm you a little bit because everyone's on a different track. So with that said, we will begin with Erin. And Erin is also going to mention an update on the t-shirts.
Oh, okay. Hi, you guys hear me? All right, I'll start with the t-shirts. So just an update on that. I'm just trying to get like a good price for you guys because I want them to be, like everyone to be able to buy them. And they were a little expensive. The first ones he sent me back, so I'm just tweaking a few things. That's why they're taking a little bit longer. So just an update on that, but hopefully I'll hear really soon of when we can start ordering those. And they will be shipped to you, so you won't have to worry about picking them up or anything. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have t-shirts. But back to the DAT. So I put on here, I took it pretty recently, still recovering. Just kidding, it was fine. But July 25th. So this is just this past July. I wanted to take it earlier, definitely. But with the pandemic, a lot of dates got canceled. And so when I went on to schedule, this was really the best that I could do. So whatever, made it work. I just took it as extra time to study. I didn't work or take classes. Part of the reason I didn't work is because a lot of people couldn't work this summer, so it kind of worked out. But I also wasn't planning on taking any classes. So I started studying right after my finals ended, so late April. But it was super light. I just kind of did like, you know, a few hours here and there to familiarize myself with boot camp. I did use boot camp. Sorry, I should have put that first. So I used DAT boot camp, started studying at the end of April up until my test at the end of July. And when I counted out the weeks that I actually studied, I took a little break for my birthday. It was about 12. So I tried to study at least 4 to 5 hours a day on weekdays, but I tried, it was closer to 7 or 8, just depends how I was feeling. I would study a lot less on the weekends. I would generally take Saturdays off or just do the mornings for a few hours. And then Sundays, I would also only do a few hours. I liked doing it that way. I didn't want to drive myself crazy studying 7 days a week for 12 weeks. I would say physiology 3200 was the most helpful class that I took before studying. There's, as you could see earlier in the slides, so many sections of that biology are just different functions of the different systems in your body. So physiology was so helpful, just like review instead of teach it to myself. And the 3200 I would recommend over the EEOB. I just felt like I got a better understanding, and it was more credit hours, but definitely worth it. So I said I used boot camp. I kind of followed the schedule that the creator had set, but it was a little bit unrealistic for me. I didn't move through the material as fast as he had said he did and that other people should. So I wouldn't get caught up in it. I would just kind of do what I could and use it as a loose outline of like the order in that I did things. I ended up taking 6 full-length practice tests, and then the other ones I took as individual sections. And I would say don't get caught up in the scores that you get on the practice tests, because I ended up doing much better than what I was getting on the practice test. So I think that they do that to kind of challenge you, even for like the harder tests that you might get. So just take those as like a base and look at what you missed, not so much the actual number that you got on the practice test. And then some tips overall. First, give yourself breaks, which I kind of said. I took a lot of the weekend off just because that made me happy. And you kind of have to try and make yourself happy and during studying, because it's a little bit stressful. And then just like breaks during the day, I would take like a little walk at lunchtime, and then I would stop, you know, to eat dinner and like exercise, just things like that that can kind of help calm your nerves and if you get overwhelmed with material. And then the second thing is just be honest with yourself when you're studying. I feel like I would just like look at the schedule and it would be like, do this today. And I would just like do it and then check it off. And it wasn't so much that I actually like comprehended it sometimes. And I would catch myself if I didn't, but it was just like, don't just like go through it to try and be like, okay, I did already schedule, now I'm ready. Kind of just like really try and retain the material, because that's what I think will prepare you best. And then the other thing is just like, don't force your studying. So like some days I can't lie, I would wake up and I'd be like, I don't like, this isn't working for me. It's just going over my head. I'm not learning much. And so I would take the day off, or, you know, give myself a longer break than I had planned. So just don't force it. Do what works for you. Yeah, I think that's all I have.
Hi guys. So my schedule, I kind of had similar experience with Erin, in the sense that like I related a lot with like the, if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. So I started studying summer after my sophomore year, and I had just taken OChem and anatomy and physiology, which helped a lot. So it was like really fresh. I signed up in May of that year. I originally had my test date in July, but as it was getting closer, I realized I wasn't ready. And so I pushed my test to August. And it was like a really good decision. I'm really glad I did it. Like if you're feeling bad about pushing your test date back, like don't. Like it was worth it for me. Like I needed those extra weeks and it really helped. I did work while I was studying. I worked Monday through Friday, just in the morning. And then the rest of the day into the evening, I would study. And I would study usually on Sunday, Saturday. I would try not to do anything. Towards the end, when my test date was getting closer, I did start studying pretty much like all day on the weekends too, just to kind of ramp it up a little bit. Again, physiology, super helpful. I know everyone said that. One thing that's kind of different, I didn't take bio 11-14 before I took the test. So I was just kind of relying on studying biology a little bit extra when I went over DAT boot camp. And I had taken AP bio in high school, so I felt like okay about my knowledge. Like at that point, I had taken biology a couple of times, so I felt okay about it. And I thought it was fine. Like I really didn't think it hindered me that much. Like I just studied the stuff that I like a little bit extra, and it was fine. And I used RA study schedule, and again, the same thing with Erin. I could not do it in 10 weeks. Like it's too much. I guess I'm just a slow studier, maybe. I don't know, but I definitely like to take my time and make sure I'm like learning everything. So I needed like 12 to 13 weeks, I would say, to get through his schedule. Overall, compared to boot camp, I did better when I took the actual test. My science scores were about the same, but like it was fine. I guess some tips: be more productive with your studying. And I would catch myself, especially for bio, just like rewriting what I just read. And I just, like looking back, it was just kind of a waste of time. Like I would spend an hour just writing notes when I have like the textbook right in front of me. So that wasn't very productive. Like I could have spent my time like actually learning the material rather than just rewriting it. So just if you catch yourself like kind of going through the motions, like stop and try a different method. And then back to the Facebook page that Lily talked about, I would read a lot of that stuff and it would kind of just like stress me out. Because I think about the Facebook page is like people are only posting like their good stuff, you know, like the people who score really high. And that would just like freak me out. So if you get down that rabbit hole, just like stop reading. It's not worth it. And I guess one thing, while you're studying, just like take time to look back and notice like how far you've come. Like once you finish a section or once you get a really good score, like that's a lot of work. Like you put in a lot of work for that. So just be proud of that moment and like let it keep pushing you forward.
Hi guys, I'm Joanna. I took my DAT the same as Sasha the summer after my sophomore year. So that was August of 2018. And I didn't work or take classes during that whole study time. I just kind of treated studying like a full-time job in that I would like study all day, but then once I got home, I just didn't think about it and just like relax. And that was really helpful for, my mental health. And I studied for 11 weeks, not including a week of vacation in July that my family just went on vacation. And at the time I was actually really worried about taking a whole week off. I thought that it would like derail my studying or make me forget things, but it honestly worked out really well because it gave me something to look forward to like at the beginning, and then it was a really nice like mental break. So yeah, I did 6 to 7 days a week, and I did study weekends, not as much in the beginning, but towards the end I definitely ramped it up. And I did about 6 to 7 hours a day, and I kept a pretty tight schedule for myself, which I mean, I'm a person that loves like routine. So I would like get up at the same time, go to the library at the same time, go home for lunch at the same time, go back to the library, so I personally enjoyed like setting myself a schedule. It made me feel like more productive. And I took Microbiome 4000 and physiology before my DAT, which I would recommend those, but they're definitely not necessary. You can always just study more for sections that you are not as prepared for. But if you are able to take it this summer off after your sophomore year, I would recommend that, just because the OChem was really fresh in my mind. I didn't have to study much for that, especially since like Ohio State prepares you really well for OChem. So personally, I thought that was a great decision for me. I did DAT boot camp, and I also did RE schedule and adjusted it to fit myself. I also used the Destroyers and Anki or Anki, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but the Destroyers I definitely didn't finish. It's pretty hefty, but I used those for like harder practice problems. And then Anki is like digital flashcards that you can download onto your computer, and they're kind of like smart flashcards. So when you're going through them, you can like, there's not just like oh, you know it or you don't. There's like, oh, how well do you know it? If you don't know it well at all, it'll come up sooner. Or if you do know it well, it maybe won't come up for a few days. So I thought that was really helpful for biology. And the actual test, I thought DAT Bootcamp prepared me pretty well for, except for the QR section. I don't know if it was just my test or what, but the QR section for me was just way harder than bootcamp. So I don't know if this is the case for all tests, but I do wish I did more like Destroyer prep for QR. But yeah. My tip is to take the day before your exam off to relax. I think a lot of people recommend this, but I thought it was really helpful for me because, of course, you're really, really stressed the day before. And really nothing that you study the day before is going to make a significant impact on your score. So just take the whole day off, like try not to even think about it. I went with my friend to the spa, like we didn't do anything DAT related. So at that point, like you've worked hard enough, you earned a day off. And the bottom line is that it's super daunting. Like, of course, this is like probably the biggest test that any of us have taken yet. And just know that like literally your whole academic career has been preparing you. Like you've learned how to study since you were young, and you go to Ohio State now, so you must be a good student. And basically like you're ready for it, and if you put your mind to it, you can definitely succeed.
What's up, everyone? So, like them, I took it this summer after sophomore year in August. So, I had 10 weeks of studying using the RE schedule almost to a T. Um, I tried to follow it pretty much exactly how it was written until I could really figure out my strengths and weaknesses. And then I kind of morphed it to fit those and like where the areas that I needed more help. And I also left 1 week after that schedule just to straight review over everything that I had done prior. And I think that helped me a ton. I think that's honestly one of the weeks that I gained the most ground. So it was, I definitely recommend trying to leave yourself a little bit of space after you think you're going to be done with this, like the study schedule, just to like review over. Um, I also, like Joanna, had a really strict schedule. I woke up at 8 a.m. Every single day and worked until about noon, took an hour break, and then went till 1 to 4 ish. And then I would exercise after. Um, Something I didn't do that I probably should have is take more days off. I studied like 7 days a week for all 10 weeks except 1 week I went on vacation and I studied like maybe 2 or 3 hours while on vacation. I just wake up before my family and do it then. So I honestly had a terrible summer. I should have put more time into relaxing, but it all worked out fine. So I would recommend if you have the time to do that. I love doing it over the summer. I didn't have to work, which was very fortunate, and I could just kind of treat it like a full-time job. I did not take physiology, which definitely kind of hurt me. I had to spend a lot more time on biology than I anticipated. So if you have the chance, like if you're a freshman or something like that, and you want to take it sophomore year, I would try to get physiology in. I think that would help a ton. And then, so the only external resources I used other than boot camp was YouTube, and that was the Orgoman QR videos, which he is the man that writes the Dat Destroyer books, and he goes through like breakdown videos of how to do each of the QRs questions. And I hadn't taken math since high school, and even in high school it was pretty poor, so I had a lot of work to do there, and it prepared me really well. And then so a weird, like what I think was helpful advice is try to find someone that is taking it or has taken it before you, just so you can rant to them. You're going to be super stressed out. And I know, like, I had someone that was a year older than me that had already taken it and done well. And I would just text him when I'm feeling like anxious about like, oh, these practice test scores or whatever. And he just kind of like talks you down, and it kind of all works out. But it's really helpful to have at least someone just to kind of like listen to you complain, and then you can kind of get over it. So I think that was probably one of my weirdest things that I did, but I really appreciated.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah and I'm the service chair. And before I give my little spiel, I just wanted to say that there's one more spot for the service event we're having this Saturday. So if you want to sign up, the link, it should be in the group me, but if not, just message me and I'll add you. But basically my advice falls a lot along with what everyone else basically said, so I'll try to keep it short. I took it after my sophomore year, and it was the best decision I've ever made. I feel like it allowed me to utilize my time like really well and just solely to study over the summer. And I did take one class, OChem Lab 2, in the beginning of the summer, so I definitely studied like a little lighter in the beginning, but after that class ended, I really went hardcore with it and studied like mostly every single day for like 7 to 9 hours. But also with that, I did study for a little over 3 months, and that was kind of overkill in my opinion. I think you guys can definitely do it under 3 months. So I did review for the last like couple of weeks that I ended with the RE's 10-week schedule. But yeah, I think you guys can do it definitely under 3 months. Like EEOB 2520, I thought was the best class to take, but the others said like the 3200 class will definitely prepare you as well. And I didn't take micro before, but I wish I would have taken that before I took the DAT. And like I said, I followed the 10-week schedule, and I did do the DAT destroyer problems, mostly the math, and I highly recommend that. I think that definitely saved my score. For my next point, my overall score was like basically what I thought it would be, but my QR, like I was doing terrible. So I thought I was like gonna get a really bad score, but I think because I did those destroyer tests, like I got like a much higher score, and I was like so shocked. But one thing that I wish I did was take more breaks. I definitely did not take any breaks. Like I was really a stickler for my schedule. Like I didn't allow myself to like hang out with my friends or family. Like whenever someone asked me to hang out, I would tell them no. So I wish I did that and like allowed myself to just like breathe and just like be with my friends and my family. And then like everyone else is saying, just don't get caught up in the nitty gritty details of the material. Like Lily said, like breadth over depth. And then making a schedule is also really important, just sticking with it. So you're successful in the end. And then and just stay motivated and know that you're more than capable of doing well and being successful on the DAT.
Okay, I'll be the last one to kind of describe my journey. So I took mine pretty recently as well. So the summer after my junior year, I'm sure there are a few of you right now who are overwhelmed by the amount of people who took it after their sophomore year. But don't worry, you absolutely do not need to rush it. Don't feel like you have to take it after your sophomore year. It's totally okay to take it during your junior year summer or during the school year. It sounds like almost all of us took our DAT over the summer, but there are quite a few people who take it over winter break as well. There's truly no right time to take it. It's mostly based on what your class schedule looks like, what your work schedule looks like, what your energy level looks like. And it definitely requires you to sacrifice some things. So because I took mine in the midst of the pandemic, I probably would have been working a lot, but that wasn't really feasible. So I also was not working or taking any summer classes, which was definitely a privilege to be able to focus completely on my DAT studying. But again, don't feel the pressure to take it sophomore year summer. That can definitely alleviate some stress, but it's totally doable. And then something Mitchell mentioned was finding someone who is taking the DAT alongside you or has already taken it. So for example, Erin and I were both taking our DAT just about 2 weeks apart. So we were able to kind of text all the time, ask each other questions, talk on the phone, and just kind of decompress. So I think that's really good advice. And I created a DAT GroupMe, which I will send the link to in our current Pre-Dental Club GroupMe. So if you're not already a member of that, you should definitely join, and you will find at least 30 other people who are in the same boat as you. I also vaguely followed the 10-week study plan, but I am a slow learner. I need a lot of repetition, a lot of time. So it was more like 12 to 13 weeks. You can see the exact dates below, and then about 6 hours a day. And I needed to take weekends off, which I know a lot of people don't do. And I probably would have done better on my exam had I not taken weekends off, but I absolutely needed the recharge and the mental health break. And like many people have said, physiology or EEOB, there's the EEOB class and then the physiology 3200. They both pretty much teach you the same content, but at different paces, different professors. And if you have to choose between taking one of those physiology classes versus microbiology, most people would say physiology. But if you can squeeze them both in, that's definitely ideal. I also only used boot camp, and I took many individual section tests. So basically, like for example, I would take a general chemistry test, And then after that, I would take a biology test. But I only took 2 full-length practice exams, which probably would have been better if I had taken more, but I just could not get myself to sit down for over 5 hours in one day and crank it out. So I just took the individual section tests. I definitely struggled with time on the reading section and the QR section, just because those are at the end of your exam. Your brain is a little fried. So I do recommend kind of getting just gaining that practice. And yeah, I think if I had to recommend something, it would be, instead of learning like brand new facts, like especially towards the end of your study, like before your exam, instead of trying to learn all of the brand new like details, put those aside and just keep doing practice problems, because those will naturally introduce you to things that you don't know through a more practice-oriented way. Okay. Now we will do a Q&A little moment. If there are any questions that you've had throughout the presentation, either about our individual journeys or about the structure, logistics, feel free to mention that in the chat or out loud. And while we wait, there is one thing that I forgot to mention, and it is that every DAT is different in terms of difficulty, and obviously you get different questions. So for example, Joanna said that her QR section was really difficult, but someone else's QR section may have been pretty easy, but you are scored relative to how everyone else taking that same exact exam did. So if yours is really hard, everyone else's is really hard too. All right, so someone asked, how soon should you take your DAT before applying to dental school? Do any of the other eBoard members want to answer that?
Oh, I'll answer it. I feel like it's just kind of up to you. Obviously, me and Lily both took ours after our junior year, and I applied right after I took my DAT, and that, I mean, that's what I did, and that was fine. But a lot of people who took it the year before, were able to apply a little bit earlier. So I would say, if you think that you would do better by waiting to take it, then do that. Otherwise, take it early so you can apply early. I'm happy that I waited to take it, but that's definitely not the case for everyone. So I think it's just kind of up to you. It just depends when you want to apply. But you kind of want to, they also tell you that you can apply without your score, which you totally can. I wanted to apply with my score, so that's why I waited to apply, but you could apply early and then take it late. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that. I feel like there's no right answer for that. It's just kind of up to you.
Yeah, doesn't your score stay good for like 2 years or something like that? So
yeah, I think, yeah.
Apply within 2 years of taking the test. You should be good.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do happen to have to retake it, like I said earlier, there's a 90-day period. So if you do take it right before you plan on applying, but then you don't get the score that you necessarily hoped for, then there's definitely this 3-month critical waiting period. So that's something to keep in mind. Hopefully you won't have to retake it, but it is very normal if that does end up being the case. So yeah, like Erin said, you can submit your application without your DAT score, and then once you take it, that will be factored in, but most dental schools will not even look at your application without it. So it's more of like a peace of mind thing to kind of get it submitted. But yeah, like they said, there's no perfect time to take it, but yeah, Erin took it July 25th and then applied pretty much that week. So hopefully that helps. And as for financial aid, I am almost positive that there is definitely a waiver for the DAT, and even for some dental school applications. So that's something I can definitely look into more. Or if you Google DAT waiver or financial aid, you should stumble upon something. And if not, you can message me and we can try to figure out a way to discover that.
The screenshot I sent is actually information about the DAT waiver. It opens on January 1st, and there's only like a certain amount of funds available. So like January 1st, like turn in all your stuff. I think it's like a little personal statement kind of thing. But it's in the screenshot if you guys want more information.
Thank you. And then, yes, Mitchell mentioned that we're not associated with DAT Bootcamp. They don't like sponsor us or anything of that nature, but it definitely is a resource that a lot of previous students have used, a lot of current students have used. So it just naturally kind of is mentioned many times. And then if any of the other eBoard members want to answer this question, it says, if you are working during the time you are preparing for the test, do you think studying less hours per day over a longer period of time would work the same or maybe be as effective?
So I did work while studying. Like I said, I worked in the morning, like 9 to noonish, and so I'd probably start studying around 1. So I think that is also why like the 10-week study schedule didn't work for me. Like I just needed more time because I didn't have as many hours. So I think it would work the same. I would just be careful that you're not taking too long of a period of time, because like after a certain point, you're just going to forget everything that you studied from the beginning. And like, if you just drag it out for too long, I think there's kind of like a sweet spot you have to find. If it's too long, then you're really not like retaining information or like keeping it fresh in your mind. So I'd be careful. Like there's plenty of people who work and take the test, so it's definitely doable. I think you just have to like make sure you're scheduling out a good chunk of hours to study. And if your time, like if you're studying less per day, that's fine. Then you might need a longer period of time, but just make sure it's not like months and months and months. Like make sure you give yourself like an end date, I would say.
Totally. Yes, that's a great point. And just to reiterate that a lot of people do work or take a class alongside studying for the DAT. So it's super normal, definitely more to balance, but yeah, maybe like the critical sweet spot would probably be maybe 3-ish months or less. It's totally up to you and the way that you learn. And then the next question talks about pricing of certain study tools and how much did we spend in preparation. So I think I mentioned earlier that bootcamp is right around $500. And then Catherine corrected me in the chat, and the DAT cost is now $475. So if you're factoring those two, that's already nearly $1,000. But as for Destroyer, does anybody know how much Destroyer or any other study tools cost around?
I'm not entirely sure what like the market price for destroyers are. I bought mine off of another student. So you could, I don't know if anyone's selling them now, but you could definitely look into like older ones like off eBay or Amazon. I'm sure people are selling like older ones, and it's totally fine if it's not like that year, because they come out with ones every year. And for boot camp, I split my boot camp with 2 other people. And so with the price got split 3 ways, and like that was really great for me. I'd say the only con to that is like you kind of have to like keep track of your own progress, because like whoever is going fastest, you just see their progress and you kind of see everyone's scores. So that's like maybe the only con, but I thought it was totally worth it to split boot camp.
Also for other DAT study materials, the other Dental Club Seed has a DAT library, so you can like check out old Destroyer books, old bio notes, different like Cliff's bio notes or whatever. There's like a bunch of study materials at the dental school with the Seed DAT library. So those are all free too. You can just like borrow them and use them for a summer over winter break or whatever, and then just give them back. So that's another option too.
Sasha, if anyone wants to find out more about that, should they message you or owner?
Yeah, you can just message me on GroupMe, or my email is .3, just my last name .3. So yeah, either way.
Awesome. Hopefully that answers your question. There are definitely some YouTube videos that people recommend, which are free. So yeah, it's definitely a cost, but overall, yeah, something to budget for. And then someone asked, do you recommend taking biochem before the DAT? Personally, I don't think it's that necessary. I think that the biochem at OSU is like much more intense than anything you'll see on the bio section, especially like we've mentioned many times before, it's typically breadth over depth. So if you can't fit in biochem before the DAT, do not even try to squeeze it in if it's only going to make your life harder. Does anyone else agree or disagree?
I would say that I thought it helped. I'm also a biochem major, so I think it helped me a lot. Just like I took several biochem classes, which I know not everyone would do, obviously. But I think like when you're studying the bio section, there's definitely biochem on there that you can easily just memorize and like teach to yourself. But it just helped me to review it rather than learn it, is all I would say. But it's definitely, I don't think it's like absolutely necessary, like Lily said. And then I can answer the next one if you want to, is about DAT over the summer after junior year. It said, do you feel like you forgot a lot of the science material? So I would say I forgot Gen Chem, but I feel like even taking it after sophomore year, I probably would have forgotten Gen Chem. OChem stayed with me just because I felt like it came up in biochem, which you don't have to obviously take, but I also really enjoyed OChem, so it stayed with me for that reason. But I think that it easily, like you can easily get it back studying. Like everything will look familiar. You definitely still have to study it. Don't like, a lot of times I would be like, oh, I know this, but I like didn't know it. So like I definitely did forget stuff, but I don't think that it's impossible to get it back to you. And it was nice that I was familiar with a lot of things. Since I took it after junior year, I had so many classes under my belt that like almost everything I looked at I had learned before, and it was just a matter of getting it back to me.
I totally agree with that. I think the only thing that slipped me was general chemistry, but besides that, having a strong foundation through 3 years of undergrad made the process a little simpler, especially I think organic chemistry is kind of something you have to keep up with, but it's very ingrained within you after taking it at OSU. So hopefully that answers your question. But honestly, don't freak out if you have to take it after junior year. A lot of people even wait longer than that, so no worries. And then someone asked if there is any calculus on the exam, and like Mitchell said, no, there's only algebra, maybe some pre-calc and stats. It is pretty simple and basic. So thankfully there's no integrals or anything wild beyond that. Are there any other questions or comments that people who have already taken the DAT want to make? Okay. If there are more questions, feel free to use the DAT GroupMe. I'm going to send that in our mass GroupMe right now so that you can access it in case you're not already a member. It's definitely daunting and overwhelming, but you can do it, and you have a whole army behind you to support you through it. As I mentioned earlier, there is a little study guide by some previous students. It's quite long. I'm not going to go over it in detail, but if you still feel a little bit shaky on some things, this is super awesome and accessible and detailed. So feel free to use that. And beyond that, that is about it. So if there aren't any more questions, you are free to go.